Hello, darlings. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com. Welcome back. It is 2022, and I am recording, if you are watching this rather than just listening to it, from a brand new space. I had a nephew join our household in the weeks since I have been with you last. He is 19 years old, and the place that I, for all these years past, have been recording from has been our guest room. And that was the only other available bedroom in the house. So guess what? 19-year-old comes to live with us, and I had to find a new recording space. So here you are on one wall of what is my craft room and my wife's office. And that marriage is not a perfect one, as no marriage is or can be. But it means that I'll be evicting her from this space at least once a week in order to clock my time and conversations with you all here in the craft room. So I've been putting in some thought energy and doing some writing in the weeks since I've been talking to you. And, 2022 feels like second verse, same as the first, right? The pandemic continues. We have a new, more transmissible variant. And the relentlessness of this pandemic, I think, is so comparable in many ways to the experience of relentlessness of chronic pain and illness. And I think it is fascinating that more people are getting this kind of lens on what it's like to live with more restrictions, feeling more hemmed in, living with more fear, living with a thinner veneer, feeling like all of your resources have been tapped, and therefore any next thing is going to be the straw that breaks the proverbial camel's back. And I don't wish this upon other people. That's certainly not my point. Just an interesting one to think about what happens when more of the world experiences life in a more exposed and pressure cooker kind of situation in ways that often mimic our lives. And that brings me to my point for today, which is about suffering. I was thinking about the fact that in Western civilization, we have such an endemic narrative about suffering. And I'm sure it extends back before Homer and the Odyssey, but it certainly extends back to there, and it's in the Bible and the Torah and most of our religious texts. And it's certainly in our movies and our quest literature like Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings series, and almost everywhere you turn, this notion that suffering yields reward. Right. And I think that's one of the cosmic kicks in the teeth about chronic pain and illness. And quite frankly, part of what breaks me down and leads to some of my greatest mental anguish is the continuous realization that this suffering isn't gaining me a damn thing, not a better afterlife, not a better this life, not financial reward, not physical reward. I don't get to make a wish and clean up the environment because I'm stuck in this prison of a body. I don't get to have a better relationship with my spouse or any other people in my life because of it. I mean, I certainly have a buoyant mindset about most things. And so I can sit here and say to you that I think that most circumstances in our life are fodder, and therefore we can make compost. But there are just as many days that I can acknowledge that's just a load of shit. But by that, of course, I mean that these illnesses have been my teachers, that I've certainly done more contemplative work, more internal work, more work probing my psyche and self-knowledge and stillness and how to work with my own pain and anguish than I ever would have done in this lifetime had I not been held prisoner, had I not been held to these circumstances in this particular way. And it doesn't negate that this is suffering in a seemingly senseless kind of way and without any promise of relief or reward. And I think suffering in this physical kind of way is truly what most of us fear most. When I think about the circumstances of my own death, it's not transitioning to death that I am most afraid of. It's having great suffering in the lead up to it. You know, it's suffocation, it's agonizing pain, it's causing my loved ones terrible pain by losing my mind and all my faculties and being even more of a burden. And the nephew right now is going through a series of being really enamored by sort of mob shows. And so he's, I'll walk through the room and he's got on all sorts of torture scenes, from the proverbial lop off a finger with some pruning shears to hang somebody up by their wrists and take physical shots at them or take literal chunks off of them. And I think that it's no accident that there are these tropes in our media. And I think that it's because it's one of the things we fear most, that kind of physical suffering that many of us have had to learn how to figure out, how to normalize, how to make peace with, how to find our way through each day. And how remarkable. How remarkable. So this isn't, again, to wrap this up with neat bow or to maybe even tell you something that you hadn't thought about already, but to tell you, you are not alone. And part of what's so isolating and challenging about our circumstances is that, yes, this is suffering without any promise of it getting anything but worse. And for that, I'm sorry. But there are millions of it with doing this with you. And while that does not alleviate or take away, subtract, or make any bit easier the suffering that you are personally experiencing right now, it does mean that you don't have to be doing it alone. So if you have not reached out in the last few months, I encourage you to, and you can do that with me. You can use the comment section, or you can find me at AnnetteLeonard.com, or find your tribe, whether that's on Facebook or the Mighty or other health platforms. Let 2022 be the year of not doing it alone. I love you. I'm thinking about you. I've got some interviews and big things in store this year, but if there are subjects that you want me to cover, I'd be glad to hear about that too. So Until we're together again, I thank you. I'm glad you're here, and I'll talk to you again next week. Be well.